Right then, boys and girls, that was better, wasn't it? Jesus, that was the kick-off I wanted. Thank you very much. Everyone's involved. We've got the Nazis back, we've got the Jews back, the Americans are in. We now know what Uncle Jack looks like. Can't say I'm overly intimidated by a bloke who looks like he's in his mid-20s. Supposedly being somebody who's in his mid-40s. But hey-ho. The guy who plays Mosley has got him down to a T historically. The way he acts, the mannerisms, everything, it works. This should have been the first episode. I get they want to set stuff up, but this is it. This is what we wanted. I mean, good God, that was better. From the get-go, it was on it. You look at, I mean, Kieran Murphy doing a monologue to the Labour socialist movement in Birmingham. That's Kieran Murphy at his best. Pure dialogue, charisma, walking around, giving some good material, and it really works. I do have an issue, and I can't place my finger on it. I think there's a little bit of style over substance here. And I'm hoping to God I'm wrong. I mean, I love the way it's shot. I love the way everything's composed. It's got a very steampunky... There's a real elegance to the way the set design, the camera angles, the lighting, everything works to tell a story. The music works fantastically. I'm just struggling to see where this story's got in mind. It was weird. I was talking to some people this week about last week's episode and sort of theories and what have you. And my cousin came up with a really good sort of plot of, Tommy's going to die in this. And I sort of laughed it off and said, Stephen Wright says he's going to do a movie. There's no way they're killing off Tommy. I may be wrong, and I hate to admit it, but I may be wrong. I mean, they're obviously going for this epileptic storyline, which can be fatal if it's not treated. Tommy's attitude is generally quite self-destructive anyway. So whether that theory actually holds water, I think it might do. I think we're looking at the redemption and death of Tommy Shelby at the minute. There are so many different elements of this that work, and that are really, really... I can see where there's a story going. I can see that it's going to get there. They're laying the pieces. Obviously, it's awesome to see Tom Hardy back as Solomon's. And there's something about when you see Tom Hardy on screen, he's got he's a very method actor's way of performing. It's so intense to the point you can be almost parody. The sort of extreme intensity in the way that Tom Hardy delivers his lines, and he completely believes he's embodying this character, and the changes and the evolutions of the character he really, really buys into. My one criticism, especially in some of his TV work, is it can almost get to the point of being nonsensical because of the way, the intensity in which he performs sometimes outshines the dialogue and the story that he's trying to convey. Tommy's clearly trying to work all angles here. From the Nazis, and I'm happy to see that storyline return, actually, because it needed something. There needs to be so much more in play than just him and Michael, because Michael doesn't grab me as a character. I don't think Finkel's got the stage presence to hold a story together. in the same way Finkel does. Kieran Murphy does. Finkel just, when you're going against a more seasoned, intensive actor who's essentially had the whole series built around him and his performance, it just doesn't hold water. That's why he needs the likes of your Tom Hardys and Oswald Mosley's around him to sort of bring out the better. Then one thing I really did like was the so-called death of Tommy Shelby when he was talking to Uncle Jack. Because it's true, Tommy's always been a self-destructive character in one way or another. It's been threaded through the whole way through the series. He was very much affected by World War One, watching everyone dying, the sort of horrors and the dankness of it all. And you know, if you read actual historical backgrounds into World War One and the trenches and the absolute bleakness of commanding officers towards your sort of general squaddies and how badly it was all handled and the unnecessary loss of life there. You know, I mean, to be fair, look at Blackadder, their World War One series for a decent reference that's not so stylized and tries to bring some light to it. I would definitely look at that sort of work, but it's very much that theme of this was a dark, horrible, dank, depressing life, and loads of lads came back who were never the same. I mean, if you talk to most army veterans, they'll probably say the same regardless of what war it is. They don't come back the same. And I think one of the best choices in terms of how you go about describing some of this and the boys that came home and the struggles with civilian life afterwards. Tommy's a great sort of snapshot of that. This ultra charismatic, good looking, successful man who, given his choice, any second would blow his own brains out. You know, it's... And the fact that he always says, you know, I killed Tommy Shelby 4 years ago when I stopped drinking. And when he put that gun to his head, you know, that's pretty true. And I think throughout this series, he's sort of had a dissociative personality disorder. When Polly died, part of him died, and he's not really recovered. And you can sort of see that in his relationships with the people around him. His sister Ada, brother Arthur. He doesn't, and especially sort of Lizzie, his wife, you know, they're not there anymore. They're things for him to take care of, things for him to look after, but they're not really real people to him anymore. They're just like Ada said, you know, everything's just a checkbox, something on the list. And I think that comes across really well from all the actors, especially sort of Lizzie. I mean, if you know the backstory of Lizzie, you know, she started off as a prostitute who Tommy visited, and sort of when his first wife Grace died, he then married her so that the children would have a mother and he would have a companion. But you can almost see in every interaction that Lizzie has with people, it's almost like she's working again. She's so disassociated from Tommy and from the people around him. And when Tommy asks her to do anything, it's almost like she's working again. She's completely detached from Tommy, almost to a point of she wants him to be okay, but doesn't actually care for this man anymore because he stopped caring about her many, many years ago. And you know, the interactions with Oswald's wife as she was looking down her nose at her and sort of parroting you know, modern feminism and everything else like that. It's quite telling, this sort of dismissive, dissociative personality who's sort of just seen this as a job. She doesn't see them as people anymore because that's how people have treated her. That's how she now recognises the world because, you know, people don't treat her with any respect. They don't treat her as a human being. So she's sort of retreated back into this shell, and it's really good character work. Looking at the dynamic of the marriage as well, you know, Tommy literally just cares about the kids. That there's no real love, no real affection for Lizzie, and I think they're going to bring sort of Grace back in as they have done in other series, as Tommy has his hallucinations. I personally think it's some form of epileptic seizures that they're sort of foreshadowing with, especially with Tommy, but possibly Ruby as well. Obviously, the whole Gypsy curse and the Grey Man and the Devil iconography is something that's coming, you know, is related to Ruby, his daughter, and Tommy. They're looking at, you know, I think it's a very physical reaction that they're looking to the supernatural for, but it's also a good foreshadowing for Tommy's ex-sister-in-law to come back, Esme, who was a fairly minor character, sort of in the earlier seasons with his brother before he died and she departed the series. But obviously, because of her sort of gypsy connections, we can probably see her as a little bit of a substitute in terms of that essence for Polly. Whenever Tommy needed to speak about gypsy culture and curses and gypsy sort of folklore and superstitions, it was Polly he would go to because she was the seer. She was the she was the one that had in their eyes supernatural powers to sort of commune with the dead, see the future, all these sorts of things. And because of Esme's sort of gypsy ties, we've got a similar sort of thing there. So it's a good excuse to bring her back. How she interacts with Tommy is going to be interesting. I want to see his sort of because all his dynamics have changed with the people around him, the people he loves. The bit with Arthur was quite touching. Tommy taking responsibility for Arthur's addiction and the backstory behind that of Tommy sort of forcing the vote through the family to start selling opium, and that's how Arthur got addicted. I mean, it's a good nod to the old Sherlock Holmes tales of functioning addiction. It was a massive sort of thing in the 19th century and the early 20th. So to bring that in, like Arthur Conan Doyle did, it's a nice little nod. Whether Arthur's going to actually recover remains to be seen, but it would be nice to see because I think in this sort of lumbering addiction swayed character that Paul Anderson's being forced to portray at the minute, it wastes a lot of his potential. You don't see the range, you don't see the character of Arthur because it's sort of, at the minute, he's sort of bound to this addict and this non-presence, this liability. And I think for Peaky Blinders to be at its best, that dynamic between Tommy and Arthur needs to be really clear and really crystal. Because the chemistry between Kieran and Paul is fantastic. You know, I think the three main characters of the whole series was always sort of him and, you know, the three of them, including Helen McClory, sort of ran the show. it's quite interesting to see the writers actually had it that they're trying to make Ada the new Polly, and she's not quite fitting into the role. And I think that's quite interesting considering, she was a minor character in the earlier series, and, Michael as Polly's son was always kind of on the periphery. I think it's quite telling that the show's not quite sure whether these characters can step up and whether they're ready to really challenge Tommy's authority and challenge him on his views and his plans, and even for in terms of Michael's case, it's can he be a good adversary for Tommy? And I don't think it'll ever be that. I think it's the people around him. The fact that they've got the IRA involved and some of the dialogue that was given to Tom Hardy regarding the Irish and the history was really spot on. And the dismissiveness of it all really speaks to a general English dismissiveness to Irish history and Irish gripes. The line of, I saw an Irishman argue with a statue of Oliver Cromwell and all that happened as he broke his hand. That dismissiveness and that lack of feeling towards the Irish sort of question permeates even today. I don't want to get political over Brexit and what have you, but there is a sort of dismissiveness regarding Northern Ireland and the Republic that still lasts today, and completely ignores the really torrid history between, the United Kingdom and the rest of Ireland. So I think some of that work is really, really well done, and I want to see that sort of carried forward. Because you're using in some cases actual historical characters, I think it's really important that you're clear about actual history and portray. Even if you're using some form of dramatic license, you are portraying events in a reverent and factual way to really lay down the importance, even in drama, of some of our historical events and how they actually felt to be lived in. One of the bad things about doing history in class is you're reading it from a textbook, so it's not really lived in. You're looking at it from a dissociated angle and a dissociated sense of what actually happened. It doesn't feel lived in, and I think that's a line that they even tried to use with Tommy. Lizzie sort of questioned him and said, it's like you looked as if we're going, you're looking at us through a screen. And I think that's a conduit for the audience. One of the things they're really trying to do is make this show feel lived in. And it works to an extent. I sometimes don't think the dialogue and the character work justifies that lived in sense. As I said earlier, that sort of style over the substance, the fact that it looks gorgeous, sometimes distracts from some of the storytelling, and I don't know if that's lazy or just it seems to be too focused on. You're not really looking at the story overall, and I think there could be some real more bite to the dialogue and the urgency and the general. I don't want to say bleakness, but the time period that they're looking at is pretty bleak. It's just before World War II. It's all the setting pieces for that, and you need to look at this bleakness, and I don't know if this stylized presentation really does it. The stuff with Mosley on the platform with with the, I need the right lighting, is it the right shade of blue, get it sharper. I think that's a good actual, if you took that scene, it's a good description for the series as a whole at the minute. There seems to be this preoccupation with how things look rather than the underlying story. And I'm hoping it's some self-aware commentary. I hope it's a case of, we've given you the style, now look at what we're actually offering you as a story and as a product. Obviously, there's going to be loads of double crosses. We've got the IRA involved. We've got the Irish from America. We've got Solomons and the Jews and the Nazis, and Tommy, as he says, in the middle, sort of working around everybody. I'm hoping that they use this as a way to really egg on the story. All these different factions, there's going to be a double cross. And to be honest, that might be the thing where Tommy dies when the double cross happens. That might be the end of Tommy. But I think you need to build on this. It's a really good start. You've got all your pieces in play now. Now deepen the lore. Deepen all the factions. Give them the backstory. Give them the historical reverence that they need to make it enthralling and attractive to the viewer. Because I think this is what modern storytelling is really lacking. Some real grounded, relatable storytelling. Make characters act realistic. Not everyone's got superpowers. Not everyone's got, these perfect virtues. Look at everything. Everything has a flaw. That's what makes us human. And I think certainly sort of the last few years, we've sort of gone for this ultra virtuous or superhuman sort of character. That seems to be the thing that's been idolised. But when you look at truly, truly great TV, film, that they look at it, a lot of the great stuff is great character work. You build a person, you build their world, you build their environment, and then you see how that person reacts to the world around them. Good references for that are the likes of Breaking Bad, Sopranos, where you're looking at morally, and to be honest, it's maybe a good thing to start comparing Tommy Shelby, the character, to, because these morally ambiguous men, what forms them? Jack sort of said, what made you angry? What made you you? And it's a good question for how you build a character. What made you you, and how do you react to the world around you? Tommy season 1 is not Tommy in season 6. And there was that big change once, towards the end of season 5 and the Tommy we have now. And I think the way to describe him as dead is a good way to sort of distinct this massive character arc shift from one to another. As a they keep bringing up that he doesn't drink, and it's a good sort of, it's a relatable way to look at a person's character shift. Tommy believes that by not drinking he's a better man. He's somehow become this better version of himself. But all the people around him are sort of looking at this disassociated character who doesn't have the love and the affection that he once had. Now, I would probably say that would... You've got to look at the earlier series and say, has he ever been this sort of compassionate, loving, caring person since the war? I'd probably say not. He still has the same values. They're just more extreme. as he's become sober and more determined on this sort of list mentality of I'm going to do all this and then I rest. And again, I think that's good foreshadowing. Sort of, we're going to go through this series and then I rest. You can take that as his death, or we're going to rest the series for the movie to come out, and all this other great sort of foreshadowing. Uh, you know, and to be honest, the whole how alcohol affects you as a person's a really relatable topic to go through. As someone who used to like a drink and then stopped after, with age, and it's quite a personal story. And for those who sort of have stopped drinking, it's quite relatable, because you do change, and it is for the better. But I think with that, you've got to sort of become more human, become more compassionate, be more present in your own life and around the people that you love. And to be honest, the whole disassociation of Tommy is sort of the antithesis of what normally happens when somebody stops abusing a substance of some kind. So he's done this thing which is good for him, but it's like he's not the person. He's not shown these areas of growth where he's become a more loving father, brother, husband. He's not any of those things. The drink is just something that he stopped to dull his own senses, and he's still sort of struggling with this addiction and this and the consequences of sort of what happened to him in the war. And I think this medical, as far as I can see, it's epilepsy. If you guys think it's something else or have more knowledge, then great, I can use it in the reviews going forward. But the fact that he's sort of trying to keep it secret and under wraps and won't see a doctor, I think that's part of the self-destructive part of Tommy's nature. He sees it as his comeuppance for all the evils that he's done. He deserves to suffer this condition, and maybe he knows it internally that this will be his downfall. This will be the thing that brings him death, and maybe he thinks he deserves it. I would like to see it resolved. I would like to see that Tommy, in my head, the way to go forward is for Tommy to redeem himself and bring himself home to his family, and realise that the people around him are important, and that once all this business is done, he can go off and live a peaceful life. But I have a real feeling that that's not the story they want to tell here. They want to tell the story of a desperate man who feels the need to build an empire around him for other people. He doesn't deserve this, and he will end his journey looking after the people that he loves, and something for his kids, who he clearly adores but is a fairly absentee father. He thinks he's doing all the things that he should be doing, when what we actually all want is time as a family. All people really want, if they love you, is you, the time with you. And some people, I think it's a male trait, it's something I've suffered with. They feel the need to build these things, have these possessions, and advance and gain more and move more, and we seem to feel that's a measure of a man's success, when it's not really true. But I think being a very self-aware sort of program, they want to tap into that. What does it mean to be male? And what do some of those stereotypically male traits do to a person, especially when they've been through trauma and anguish and pain and loss? You know, all these things that Tommy's lost and had to deal with, and this trauma, it would be enough to break most people, but obviously he's thrived on it and made it work and made him survive. And so it's a nice little bit of again, it's a nice bit of character work, but I'd like to see how it develops. And maybe, the old romantic in me wants it to be a nice story where he rides off into the sunset and be, settles with himself as a person. But I think looking at modern television, that's not going to happen. But like I said, the romantic in me wants that to happen. But I'm also intrigued about how they're going to deal with, this sort of unravelling and deconstruction of a character, and the people around him. Is he going to build the family back up? Is he going to make sure that Ada's strong and that Lizzie is looked after and prepared for, and that his brother's safe? Is that his goal? And after that, he can rest. It's certainly something to look forward to, and I'm certainly far more impressed with the story this week than I was last week. But I think that's because more elements came into it to keep us intrigued as viewers. I want to give special mention for Anna Taylor-Joy because she's only ever on screen for 5 minutes looking at Michael and his stupid bloody moustache. But she has a real stage presence. If you haven't seen her work before, check out Netflix's The Queen's Gambit. She's a really interesting, complex character there, and it shows her screen presence, her stature, her confidence. Going on from that series to this, and some of the movie work that she's done, you can really see a growth in an actor there. So that's something for me to recommend to you guys. But she just oozes sex appeal, and I think it's just from her confidence. And I don't mean that of the character, I mean of her as a person. When she talks to Michael and she struts around the place like she owns it. That's for us as viewers as much as for Michael. And she's probably one of the most captivating characters who has 5 minutes of screen time. And it's always nice to see Tom Hardy, even though, sometimes Tom just tone it down, man. He really, really does a good job of making this a broader, more palatable ensemble piece. And this is the thing I was crying out for last week. I wanted the ensemble to step up. I wanted it to be not so much about Tommy. I do have a bit of an issue, again, I'm going to say with the stylistic choices, because a lot of it focuses on Tommy. The lighting, the shot selection. I get it, he's the main character, but because of the stylized way that things are done, and the fact that you're putting all these lights on him constantly, it doesn't help the viewer relate or be interested in other characters. So I think this is going to be a running theme, and I really wish they'd change it because it doesn't do anybody any favours in terms of being interested in other characters. But overall, guys, I think this was a massive improvement on last week. Well, not long because we've only got a few episodes, but may it continue and really build into something. I know this is not the show's fault, but it seriously does miss Helen McClory as Polly. as the moral compass, as the real strong female in the protagonist family. Her stage presence, her charisma, her vulnerability is really missing here. And, you know, obviously it's not the show's part, but I think it's something worth pointing out just to praise Helen McClurery in her work. Because she's been fantastic in almost everything she does. She was a really talented actress. And she was a wonderful character actress. She really did know how to envelop a character and have that become her and part of her being. And I think the show is poorer for it. I'd have probably, in response to that, written Ada slightly stronger than she is. But it's whether the actual actress could carry it off. I think she could. But the writers didn't seem to have the confidence. But it's all heading in the right direction thematically, story-wise, character-wise. Obviously the whole thing with the devil is an interesting concept, and how that all ends is going to be interesting. You can't really do much with Ruby as a character, you know. This is not a series for children to be stars of the show with. But how that relates to Tommy, and I'm so curious as to whether they're going to do a Godfather Part 3 on us, where, you know, it's not Tommy that dies, but Ruby, and how that affects him as a man, and as a human being. You know, the loss of a daughter, the loss of, well, any child. I think that's where they may be going rather than Tommy. But I don't know. I don't know whether that was a good choice, but I'm getting Godfather 3 vibes of sort of, apart from, you know, seeing your child dying and still having the empire, but not actually walking away from it. I'm wondering whether they're going to use that as a stylistic way to go. But again, these are all theory, guys, so, you know, let's work it out. And, you know, if you want to share your comments, your theories, your general insights to the show, all welcome. And, you know, let's work on it together. Let's have some fun, and let's all write comments in the on the YouTube video, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll have a good discussion over it, and we'll bring it in next week. Really, it's not perfect yet, but it's getting there. It's introducing a world that we can really get lost in again, and I'm all here for that. If any of you guys want me to do a deeper dive into this, obviously I can do a video later on in the week, but I'll see how the reactions go to this one. But yeah, it's been great talking to you guys, and I will see you next week. Wobbly Geek out.